From the 2011 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books, I'm Barbara Deeb, and we are taking you outside the book. Ever wonder what it takes to write a successful children's book? Well, we've got someone who might know just the right recipe. George Ella Lyon joins us. Thanks for being here, George Ella.
I'm so glad to be with you.
It's always nice to have you here. We were talking before we got started taping, and you were talking about the fact that you have 41 books in print. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
But you also said something else about the fact that there's no telling how many were rejected. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first 11 years I tried to publish a book, they were all rejected. So that was a book of poetry for adults. I had many manuscripts over those 11 years. But rejection is just part of it. And I tell people all the time, don't take it to heart. You know, it's not a rejection of you as a writer. For some reason, this manuscript didn't work for that publisher at that time. This book, The Pirate of Kindergarten, I wrote a long time ago, and I rejected it myself. I thought it's too personal because I was a little girl with double vision, and it wouldn't mean anything to anybody else. But I kept it because I keep everything. That's one of my advice to other people as well. Don't throw it away because you may see something later. And when I read it again, when I was organizing my files, I thought, you know, this does have a broader application. It's not just about double vision; it's about differences, and the spirit and help that sees us through those differences. So it's important to come back to things, whether you rejected them or somebody else rejected them, and see what you can learn from them.
Kind of revisit them, as it were.
Exactly.
But even when you finish a work, do you still go back and revisit it, or are you one who just, once it's done, it's finished and it needs to go?
Well, sometimes there's kind of a holding pattern before I submit something. And then sometimes, even after a book is published, there are things I can see differently now, but you're evolving, and so you have to let it go and let it be what it is and go on to the next thing.
What about children's books today? Are they different than children's books were 20, 30 years ago, or is the genre the same?
Well, I think many things about childhood are the same, and a lot of course, because of our fast-changing world, a lot of things have changed for children. And the picture book came to the fore and has been a much bigger part of kids' lives, say, than it was of when I was growing up. We had golden books that you got for 39 cents at the grocery store. 39 cents. But, you know, now the beauty and the incredible art that's in children's books is a very different thing. And, of course, now we don't know how much we're moving toward ebooks. And I know a 4-year-old who's getting an iPad, and she also ordered something off.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
So does that adjust your thinking as to how you approach the
Well,
report?
we don't know where it's going, we book people. I mean, the publishers don't know, bookstores don't know. We're all kind of in the salad spinner as far as our, I know I'll go on writing, but what the format's going to be, I don't really know. And right now, the e-royalties are much less than physical book royalties. Plus, I love books. I just love, and I think it's different when you actually have a child in your lap and an actual book. But, you know, I know that's very 20th century.
But it is to be determined how that's going to shake out.
It is.
And so maybe if enough people say, I want to hold that book in my hand and put that child in my lap and read to them, maybe that will alter the course of where it's headed.
Well, I hope so. I hope we will always have both. I hope we will always have books. I think that it is books. The book itself is an art form. I have a book about that called Book.
I want to talk about that because that's a nice segue into what a lot of people don't realize, and what I learned through doing these author interviews is that you don't always get to do the illustrations yourself. You are often, or you don't get to select who does the illustrations necessarily.
Right.
So the publisher might just say, we're going to put you with so-and-so.
Yeah, I think most often that is the case. And But if you have an editor, as I have had, Richard Jackson, since 1984, whose sensibility is very, you have a real harmonious sensibility and you have that trust. I have always felt good about the illustrators he has chosen, because he's brilliant about having the vision of what to
highlight or spotlight.
What two artists would come together and make something new. And Peter Catalinato, who did Sleep Song, that's our 9th book together. And Dick put us together.
So
and
there must a marriage made in heaven.
Yes, it really
nice
has been.
George Ella Lyon, continued success. Maybe we'll get you back here next time and you'll have made it to 50 books. Who knows? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Children's author George Ella Lyon. Songwriter, author, performer, and now add to that resume, movie actress. We're welcoming Marshall Chapman once again to Outside the Book. Marshall, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Let's talk a little bit. You got a new book out. They came to Nashville.
This is true.
And you wrote it because, matter of fact, you said you had a quote from Robert Penn Warren in the beginning, talking about people who come to Nashville with a big dream. It's almost like a big bubble on top of their head that says
That's the heart
dream.
of the book.
Yeah.
It's just, it's only when you're young that you leave everything you've ever known and go to a city where you know no one, which is, for the most case, was true, and because you have a dream. And I've always been interested in that, and that's basically the heart of the book.
Well, and you speak from experience too, because you tell the story of you getting off the bus and going to Nashville because you're going to be a singer.
Well, and I sort of came in the back door because I went to Vanderbilt University, but I looked at it as, in my family, Barbara, going to college was not open for discussion. You were going. So I thought, well, fine, 4 years free rent. That's the way I looked at it.
And such is the case. But
and everybody says, well, of course you majored in English. I said, no, I majored in French because I didn't want anybody to know what I was thinking in English.
But now they know what you're thinking in English.
Yes, they
or
do.
Maybe they question that.
Now she's writing books. Look
now
out.
She's writing books. And you have a column, a regular column that you do for...
In Nashville Arts Magazine called Beyond Words. I have a column, and I'm writing for Garden and Gun, contributing editor to that magazine. And just recently I'm writing for W.
Oh.
Which is,
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you want people, what do you want to say? What do you want them to
I'm
hear
a
you
musician,
say?
don't be fooled.
Yeah, exactly. You wear so many hats.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the wolf in sheep's clothing, in literary clothing here.
Well, speaking of literary clothing, you also extended your wings a bit in the movie Country Strong with Gwyneth Paltrow and Tim McGraw. You had a role, a very prominent role in that movie.
Well, I played her road manager, and I'd never been in a school play. Junior high, grammar, never. And I don't know how I got that part, except I have been around some road managers in my day. So it was fun.
And so it helped to be...
she's very tall, and I'm very tall. So I think they wanted somebody that was actually taller than she was. So that may have helped. Plus, my character was described in the script as 50-something. I thought, I've got that covered.
Got it.
Good-hearted, covered. No nonsense, foul-mouthed.
They had your number.
Well, a friend of mine said, Marsha, you're going to have to clean up your act to be in this movie.
But now, would you do it again? Would you be in another?
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah. But I was lucky because it was in Nashville, so I got to sleep in my own bed. The best thing is Chris and I have great insurance for the next 2.5 years.
Chris Fletcher, your husband.
He's really impressed with me now.
I love it. But let's talk about the writing and the written word. They came to Nashville. Are you wanting to just spotlight people who come there with their dreams? Do you think they still come? They're still coming every day, right?
They come in, they're getting off the bus every day. It's a little bit more business-like now. They weren't. It was real wild and woolly. Everybody came in a different wave. But when I talked to the people that came in my wave, which was like the late 60s, early 70s, Rodney Crowell, John Hyatt, we were all coming to get away from our parents. I mean, this was Vietnam. This was, and sex, drugs, rock and roll, the women's movement. I mean, it was all going on. And we were all just wild as bucks, but we were innocent wild. It's different now.
It's different now.
I think if you're wild now, and there's much more awareness about things. It's just different.
You almost can't be. You almost have to watch.
Yeah.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing, or just the nature of the beast?
Just the nature, just the way it was.
It just is.
But you know, it was just so different. I talked to Miranda Lambert, 24 years old, and then everybody from 24-year-old Miranda Lambert to 75-year-old, when I talked to him, Willie Nelson, are in this book. I wanted it to be very diverse. Because when I first got the idea, I made a list of people I wanted to talk to, but they were all men older than me and from Texas. Because those were the guys that inspired me, and there weren't that many women songwriters. So I said, no way, I'm going to I made a real concerted effort. I said, I'm going to have women, so you'll notice about half of them are women. And then, you know, I put Terry Clark lives across the street, and she's from Canada. That gave it a little international flavor. Had to get out of Texas. But I used to have a theory. I wrote a song on my first album called Between Carolina and Texas, and I'd never been to Texas, but all the songwriters I met, like Chris Christopherson and Guy Clark and Billy Joe Shaver and Willie and Waylon and Rodney Crowell, Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, the ones I really admired, it seemed they were all from Texas, and I had this whole theory that, well, it's because they don't have very many trees down there, because I was thinking West Texas. So they just have a direct line to where all the good stuff is, you know.
It falls from the sky.
It falls from the sky.
Continued success to you, Marshall.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. That's it. We're out of time. Damn. Indeed, Marshall Chapman from Outside the Book. Bye. World-renowned children's author joins us, Charles Ghigna, and he's also known as Pa Goose. And last time we had you on the show, it's been a couple of years, but you were getting ready to do some international travel. And what I would ask you as you prep and you work and you write these books for children, are children the same wherever you go?
That's an excellent question, Barbara. Yes, they are. They are still wide-eyed wherever you go. I've been all over South America and Europe, mostly United States, rich, poor, black, white, green, whatever. Yes, they're all bringing out the child in us if we let them.
And they all have deal with the same issues. I mean, as human beings, right?
They do. Yes. And one of our recent books called Score: 50 Poems to Motivate and Inspire. That works with anyone, and it works with young and old. They want to be inspired too. It just was adopted as part of the character education in some of the school systems, and it's fun seeing how it not only motivates the children, but the teachers and principals who are using it with them.
As well. Character education. Are we at the place in civilization where we have to teach character?
I think by example, yes. And what they're doing with the Score book is actually having a principal read one of the poems each morning over the intercom and just laying it out there and letting the classroom talk about whatever it is. They're just 4-line little motivational poems. But yes, I think character education shouldn't be too didactic. It should be by example.
That's a good point. And so many of your books are just that. Help us understand, for those of you that are not familiar with Charles' work, you know, what does it take to make a good children's book? And how do you even define good? You know, is good, does that mean that it's selling, or does good mean that it's inspiring?
Well, you'd like it to do all those things. For me, the personal thing, it's like writing a good poem. I write a lot of poetry. And a good picture book is like a good poem. It should show rather than tell. It should invite the reader in rather than try to just teach and preach. But if it does that by bringing them in, it's even better. Writing picture books is a marriage between myself, who writes the text, and then the illustrator who brings it alive.
And you talk about that marriage, and in some of the other interviews we've talked about the fact that often the publisher will assign you an illustrator.
Right.
So that could be devastating, actually.
Well, when I first started writing, it was, because in my mind I had exactly what I knew it should look like. But what I learned over the years is making a picture book, like most things we do in life, takes teamwork. And the more I gave over to understanding, when I was finished with the text part, the editorial part, we handed it over to the illustrator and the art department and let the magic happen on their end. When the illustrators did ask me, and do ask me, what I see, before I answer, I always say, before I tell you what I see, I want you to take it and run with it, because now it's yours. And if you promise me not to tell me how to rewrite my poems, I promise I won't tell you how to redo your pictures.
And that's probably makes for a good marriage, doesn't it?
And I'm always amazed by the images that they come up with.
And maybe they bring to the table something that you hadn't
anticipated. They do. Yes.
Yes.
Once they have that same free creativity than that I have in making it, when they know that I'm saying, please, it's yours now, they do usually add little things that I wouldn't have thought of.
You know, I don't know if this transcends through the television screen or however you're consuming this video, but you have this joy about you that kind of permeates this space. Wow. You love what you do, don't you?
I do. I really do. I'm often asked, what would you do if you weren't a writer? And weren't paid to be a writer. I said, don't tell my editors and publishers, but I'd still be doing the same thing I'm doing now. Because there was a time many years ago when I was doing it without making income. I was a teacher, but I was writing every night. I'd still be writing, even though I weren't paid for it. I love doing it every day.
And is that what you would encourage others who maybe have considered writing a children's book or any type of book, to just go ahead and do it?
Yes.
Just write.
Well, I would say that on a bigger scale, follow your passions. Yes, I know the cliche is do what you love and the money will come. I don't know about the money, but the joy and feeling alive, do your passion. My passion happens to be words and children, and when I can connect those two, I'm in heaven. So.
And the moniker Pa Goose, that's a heavy one. That's
Yes.
like Father Goose.
Well, because my name is so difficult. Charles Ghigna is hard to spell and pronounce, and little kids don't care anyway. So when I first started writing for the Disney company years ago, they said, you might want to think of another name. And there already was a Mother Goose, so I became Father Goose. And you'll notice in some of my books, my illustrators will put a little goose or a big goose. Sometimes they're hiding behind things, but I like the goose moniker now. At first I wasn't sure. And the scary thing is every day I look a little bit more like that goose.
So in some of your books, look for the hidden goose.
There you go.
What have you got? What's your next project?
Well, I thank you for asking that. We have 4 new books coming out in the next fall about nature. One of them is each season, and then we have 4 more following that, which is a series of books about how to take care of the environment for children and just be more aware and enjoy the world around you. Take care of Mother Earth and she'll take care of you.
And now that was talking about Mother Earth from Father Goose. Right. Indeed. Well, continued success, and
Thanks
it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Nice talking with you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. We've been talking with children's author Charles Ghigna. Outside the Book continues. I'm Barbara Deeb, coming to you from the 2011 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books from the Carol Knicely Center on the South Campus of Western Kentucky University. And I am delighted to have the opportunity to speak with one of the headliners here at this year's book festival, Judith Viorst. And it's appropriate that you're wearing a hat because, in my opinion, you're one of those authors that can switch hats and do different genres just equally as well. I'm a huge fan. And of course, you have to know the Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day and the Alexander series. Let's talk a little bit first about your adult writing and then how you kind of segued into children's writing.
Okay, let's do it.
Adult, you started out wanting to be a writer? Or?
I started out at the age of 7 wanting to be a writer, very serious about it, sending out my poems on lined notebook paper and my best printing, practically fainting with shock when they weren't published because I thought they were masterpieces. The leading characteristic of all my poetry for the first decade of my life, from 7 to 17, was there had to be a dead body in it. I didn't think you could write anything that was called poetry unless somebody died.
Isn't that wild?
Nobody liked it.
So then along the way you came and did you study writing?
No, I actually majored in history in college. I figured I was going to do all the reading and the writing anyway. And I just kept on writing. I tried science fiction. After college, I got a job. I wanted to be a secretary at a publishing house, and then they would turn around and say, who, this brilliant writer in our midst, and it was going to be me. But I actually didn't know shorthand and typing and wound up as a garment district model for waterproof silk shantung dresses where they demonstrated their waterproofness by throwing water on me. So they say it didn't stain, it doesn't stain. I decided to learn shorthand and typing. Worked for True Confessions magazine, wrote a confession story. They said no thanks. Moved on to Women's Wear Daily, wrote a fashion story. They said no thanks. Got a job as an editor of children's books and wrote a children's books, which was also rejected. I didn't get one word published till I got married, left New York City, and moved to Washington, D.C.
Go figure that one, huh?
I know. It was not the way it was supposed to be.
Well, who says the way it's supposed to be? Sometimes it shakes out that way. But we've got the Alexander series, which you say is based on, you have 3 now grown men.
Yes.
Children, and Alexander is the youngest of your 3?
Alexander is the youngest, but the most intense and ferocious. I mean, he has never been excluded from anything that the other brothers did because he was always chugging right behind them saying, "Hey guys, wait for me."
I love it. What do you want people to get from your children's books?
The same thing I want people to get from every single thing I write. I am interested in connection. I am interested in people reading what I write and saying, I felt that way. I know what that's like. Gee, that was my day too. I mean, I get letters from kids all the time about their bad days. And in fact, one of them said, very poignantly, "You think that was a bad day? In my life, everything is a bad day." I wanted to send him a care package.
That's definite connection.
Yeah, I love the connections. I love them with my poetry books, with my necessary losses, whatever I'm writing. When I get dressed, I want to have a dress that looks different from everybody else. When I write, I want people to say, "Oh yes, me too."
You're so prolific. Take us through a day in your life. I mean, obviously you do book fairs and you do a lot with your readers, but do you write every day?
When I have a project that I'm doing, I write every day, and I am obnoxiously, offensively well organized. I mean, I have my little list, and I love writing done, done, done. I have a certain amount I have to do every day with my writing, and I mean, even if I go to New York to visit friends, I will come with my writing assignment for that day, and I don't get to go shopping or to the theater until I've sat there at my friend's dining room table and written. I'm very, very rigid. I don't ask a lot of myself on any given day, but if you say a page a day, every day, 5 days a week, you get a lot of pages by the end of the year.
5 pages, yes. So was there a time, or is there a time when you're writing for an adult and writing the children's books? Do they coincide, or do you keep it to one project at a time?
It's generally I am alternating projects, but I also feel that I'm writing about the same things, whether I'm writing for children or adults. I'm writing what's going on inside of us and what's going on in our relationships with other people. So while people think, oh, what a switch from the grown-up stuff to the children's stuff, it's not for me. It's about what men and women, boys and girls, human beings experience.
Having said that, looking at where we are in this day and time, human beings, have we changed so much? Has technology changed us, or are we still at the core very much always the same?
I think at the core, very much the same. I think our longings, our wishes, our fears, our ambitions all remain the same. What dazzles me, what has changed so much, I think, is what little girls aspire to. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter who, she had a dream recently in which she was on the women's basketball team and scored the winning basket in the last seconds of the game. I could never have had that dream. My boyfriend would have scored the winning basket.
Okay.
Girl, I mean, it wasn't even in my unconscious. And, Olivia's trying to figure out whether she could be both an Olympic star and president, because there might be a conflict between a national crisis and a major Olympic event, but she figures she'll work it out.
So that does then affect what you write, because you have to adapt it accordingly.
That's right, and I love it. I love it that girls say, the world, anything is possible.
You also penned Necessary Losses, which you referenced a little earlier in this interview. Why did you write that book?
I studied at the Washington Psychoanalytic Institute for 6 years, and I studied there not to become a psychoanalyst, but to use what I learned as a well to dip into. And I realized that while a lot of my friends could tell the difference between a Cézanne and a Matisse and could dissect the various parts of a symphony, they did not know about mechanisms of defense. They did not know about the repetition compulsion. Material I thought was so useful in understanding your own life. So I wrote this book to talk to my friends about what was going on inside us and our relationships, And I use the theme of loss from birth to death because I realize that it's not the only way to understand the world, but understanding what we lose and how we deal with the losses to make some positive gains is one way of understanding the world.
And by not dealing with the losses, how that too can affect
exactly
who and what we are.
Exactly.
Very
yes.
much so. What's next for you? You're so prolific. I mean, what's out there yet to accomplish?
Well, what's out there yet to accomplish? I'm writing a sequel to my new children's book, which Lulu and the Brontosaurus, because this is such a bratty, impossible, and ultimately somewhere lovable girl that I couldn't let her go after the first book. So I'm just writing another Lulu, and then I hope that I'll get a chance. I've written 2 children's musicals based on Alexander, and I've done them. Started at the Kennedy Center, and they went around the country. And I suddenly discovered, I love show business. I love it when they actually say, take 5 and, 5, 6, 7, 8, sing. And I thought I was in a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland movie. I loved it. And I would love to do it once more. I would love to do one more children's musical.
And I have a feeling you'll do just that. We've been talking with Judith Viorst. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's Outside the Book from the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. I'm Barbara Deeb.